Have you ever been looking at a wine label and seen the words Vinhas Viejas? It's Portuguese, and it hints at something deeper, a story that's literally rooted in the ground. So today, we're going to dig in and uncover the secrets behind these incredible old vines.
So let me just start with this one question. What if the real secret to a truly mind-blowing wine has nothing to do with fancy barrels or high-tech winemaking, but with something much older, something that's been alive, breathing, and growing in the earth for a century or more?
Well, that brings us to the term Vinhas Velhas, and you say it kind of like Vinhas Velhas. All it means is old vines. But that simple phrase, well, it describes vineyards that are a living connection to the past, with vines that have seen it all for 50, 70, or even well over 100 years.
So what's the big deal? What actually makes an old vine so special? I mean, it's not just about being old for the sake of being old. There's some fascinating science going on here, both deep underground and right there on the vine. Okay, first, just look at the roots. A young vine, it hangs out near the surface, just grabbing whatever's easy. But an old vine, it's spent decades, literally decades, pushing its roots way down deep into the earth. It's tapping into layers of unique minerals and water that the younger guys just can't get to. It's like deep earth mining, and that is where the magic starts. That's where you get those incredible notes of wet stone or graphite in the final wine.
And that wisdom, it doesn't just stay underground, it goes right into the fruit. Think of an old vine like a wise old author. They don't write a lot of books, but the ones they do are masterpieces. The vine naturally produces fewer grapes, so all of that energy, all those amazing nutrients from deep in the earth get packed into just a few berries. The flavor's just incredibly concentrated. Young vines, on the other hand, they're all about quantity over quality.
So what you get in the end is this: a perfectly self-regulating plant. It's achieved this natural balance, making grapes that have this incredible harmony of sugar, acid, and character. It's a plant that has truly, totally mastered its little corner of the world.
And these botanical treasures aren't just in one place. Nope, they're all over the world, in the famous historic heartlands of wine, and even in some places you might not expect. So let's take a quick trip around the globe.
We're going to start in France, of course. Picture the steep, sun-baked hills of the Rhone Valley. That's where you'll find these ancient Syrah and Grenache vines. And they're not just old, they're the source of some of the most powerful, most legendary wines on the planet, like Chateau Neuf du Pape.
All right, next stop, we're heading to Germany's Mosel Valley. I mean, just imagine these ridiculously steep slate hillsides with gnarly old Riesling vines just clinging to them. These vines are famous for producing wines with this electric, razor-sharp acidity and a minerality that literally tastes like the rocks they grow in. It's incredible.
Now, over in Portugal's Douro Valley, you have entire hillsides just covered in these historic vineyards. And what's really cool is that many of them are field blends, where you've got dozens of different native grapes all growing together. These old vines, they're the soul, the very backbone of the world's greatest port wines. Okay, get ready for a surprise. You probably think of Australia as New World, right? But the Barossa Valley is actually home to some of the oldest continuously producing Shiraz vines on the entire planet. See, because they were so isolated, they completely dodged the plague that wiped out Europe's vineyards in the 1800s. Some of these vines date all the way back to the 1860s.
Hopping over to the USA, you can trace California's early wine history through its Zinfandel vineyards. A lot of these twisted, historic vineyards are still around, and they produce wines that are just pure California. Big, bold, spicy, and just loaded with character.
And for our last stop, we land in South Africa, where old vine Chenin Blanc is basically a national treasure. These tough old vines make an unbelievable range of wines, from super crisp and fresh to really rich and complex, but they all have that signature depth that you can only get from age.
Okay. We've seen where they grow, we've talked about why they're different, but let's get to the most important question, right? What do these old vine wines actually taste like? What's the payoff when you finally pop that cork?
Well, it really all boils down to a few key things. Right away, you're going to notice this intensity of flavor that's just on another level. There are all these layers of complexity that go way beyond simple fruit. We're talking spice, earth, minerals. These wines just have this perfect balance, a vibrant acidity, and they can age beautifully for decades. But most importantly, they are the purest expression of their terroir you can possibly find.
I absolutely love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head.
Drinking a wine from old vines isn't just about tasting grapes. It's about tasting history. It's about tasting the geology and the climate of a place. It really is the soul of the vineyard captured in a glass.
But here's the thing. This beautiful story does face a pretty big challenge. These living, breathing monuments are under threat, and trying to preserve them isn't easy in our modern, fast-paced, high-production world. Here are the main hurdles they're up against. First, there's a ton of economic pressure to just rip them out and plant new vines that produce way more fruit. Makes sense, right? More fruit, more money. Second, their gnarly, twisted trunks make it impossible to use modern tractors and machines. It all has to be done by hand. And finally, just like anything that gets old, they can be more vulnerable to disease, which means they need really careful and often expensive management.
So what can we do to protect this incredible legacy? Well, the good news is it's a team effort. We can support farmers who use sustainable practices to keep the vines healthy for the long haul. Winemakers need to be proud and put Old Vine right there on the label to signal what's inside. And maybe most importantly, we as wine lovers can seek out and choose these wines. That creates the demand that makes it worthwhile for farmers to keep them in the ground. Because when it comes right down to it, these vines are so much more than just agricultural plants. They're a living library. They hold genetic material and a direct connection to a history that, if it's lost, can never, ever be replaced.
So that really leaves us with one final thought. These wines, they offer a flavor you can't get anywhere else, a depth that tells a story of time and place. And the real question is, for all of us, is the taste of history a flavor worth protecting?